Dr. Carin Bondar, the vice chair of Chilliwack School District 33, is suing a former school trustee for referring to her as a striptease artist. Whether or not that comment is defamatory and caused her harm, like she testified to in court this week, well, that's up to the High Court to decide. And today I bring you an update on what happened during some of her cross examination, as well as what happened when I caught up to her to ask her whether or not she believed some of the comments she's been making and her partner about others is also causing harm.
While humans generally accept genetic donations from only one donor at a time, you can see that in the animal kingdom, sometimes it makes sense to be a little whore.
Do you have any comments for people who were offended by you dressing up as Jesus Christ and swearing F the church? No comment? Just the finger? What are you going to say to children who find your naked body online? Drea Humphrey here with Rebel News, and when it comes to the Chilliwack School Board District 33, I could probably put out a report every week and keep you scratching your head about what the heck is going on in that board, especially when it comes to matters like trustees having a tug-of-war with other trustees or other citizens about whether or not things like gender ideology belongs in schools. And this report, my friends, shall not disappoint. Meet Dr. Carin Bondar. She's the vice chair of the Chilliwack School District. She's also a professor at the University of the Fraser Valley who calls herself a biologist with a twist. Perhaps this is why.
Come and join me, Dr. Carin Bondar, as I delve deep into my favorite topic, animal sex. Ever heard of the phrase, "F like rabbits"? Spiked penises, golden showers, and a 15-meter-long member. I'd rather be stuck here in these pants with you than forced to die in a sea of ejaculate. I'd like to talk to you about group sex. No need to be embarrassed. Now, while humans generally accept genetic donations from only one donor at a time, you can see that in the animal kingdom, sometimes it makes sense to be a little whore.
Now, that's just some of the publicly available content of Dr. Bondar that, of course, is at the heart of this defamation case. And quite frankly, it was at the heart of the controversy that surrounded her even running as a trustee in the first place. Although it would seem, given the testimony that I heard in Supreme Court this week, that Dr. Bondar doesn't think this is controversial at all, unlike Barry Neufeld. Neufeld is a former 7 times elected trustee for Chilliwack, and he's in the hot seat right now for referring to Bondar as a striptease artist. He was on a Power Hour Zoom meeting, which was put on by the organization called Action for Canada last September. And in that, when he was talking about a by-election that Bondar ran in, well, he said this.
Richard Prosy ran against that striptease artist in the by-election 4 years ago. We thought he was going to win, but something funny happened with the mail-in ballots.
Now, I want to mention that Neufeld has been a long-lasting critic, one of the first to speak out about Western Canada's sexual orientation gender identity program, SOGI 123. It's a program that's fluid within schools, like many across the country, that are paving the way for things like sexually explicit images and books to be in schools' libraries under the guise of teaching inclusivity, or parents say it's causing a wedge between the values they teach their kids and what kids are learning behind their back in schools, like being confused about their identity, their biology, under the form of gender confusion. Now, in contrast, Dr. Bondar is somewhat of what I would call a cheerleader for SOGI 123, to the point that she actually had the audacity to say that people participating in the parent-led protests we've been covering, speaking out against such programs, well, it's actually them who are sexualizing the children. Take a listen.
The first issue is the sexualization. I would actually argue that these protesters are hell-bent on sexualizing children because it is all they ever talk about. They're obsessed with genitals and sex and things they don't understand. Okay, so I don't remotely agree that this is a sexualizing curriculum or set of learning resources. Okay.
Now, of course, when I saw Dr. Bondar leaving the courthouse, I did want to ask her about those comments because many are offended by that. But before I get to that footage, I want to talk about her partner, Peter Lang, the president of the Chilliwack Métis Association. You see, he's a controversial figure too, especially since recently at a protest, he was counter-protesting, another parent-led one. He dressed up as Jesus and said the following.
Hey, you next to the schools and the church.
You're gonna have to go away, okay?
Why?
Exactly. Go
No,
right there.
why?
The whole side over there. Go over there, buddy.
But
is not a good example of love. This is not a good example of love. This is abuse. This is abuse. You are bullying.
And yet you have somebody dressed in
You protect pedophiles. You protect pedophiles. The church. The church. The church. The church.
Quite the power couple, isn't it? A match made in heaven or the other place. So naturally, when I caught up with them coming out of the courthouse, I wanted to ask, in contrast to Barry Neufeld's comments, do they think what they've been up to is also harmful?
Do you think it's harmful to accuse parents concerned about Soji as sexualizing children? Is it any more harmful or less harmful than the words that you're suing Barry Neufeld for? No. How about you, Mr. Lang? Do you have any comments for people who were offended by you dressing up as Jesus Christ and swearing at the church? No comment? Just the finger? And how about you, Dr. Bondar? Did you support your partner in that? Do you find it Christophobic at all? What are you going to say to children who find your naked body online?
This, my friends, this is the quality, the caliber of the head of the Chilliwack Métis Association and one of the heads of the Chilliwack School District, mocking Christianity and swinging naked on a wrecking ball to a Miley Cyrus parody and sucking off a sledgehammer and licking a microscope. How am I saying those words when it comes to a school trustee? Now, I caught up with Jaffe at the end of the evening to just catch up with him to see what is really on the line here. Should, for some reason, Neufeld actually lose this case? Here's what he had to say.
Well, the allegations against Mr. Neufeld are, well, there's only really one. It's just that he allegedly defamed Carin Bondar by using the phrase striptease artist about 24 minutes into a 1-hour Zoom session with Action for Canada, who tend to be supporters of the causes that Barry fights for. And she's pled in her claim that this reference to striptease artist has somehow libeled her, and she's claiming damages. And Mr. Neufeld's defense is that it's not an unreasonable phrase in the context of how he views Dr. Bondar. And if he's wrong on that, he's arguing fair comment. It's a matter of public interest. He expressed his views on something that, and if he's wrong on that, there's this thing called qualified privilege, where he's speaking to the electorate, and he, as a candidate, had a duty to convey his views openly and honestly to an audience that had what's called a reciprocal interest in hearing that information. So there's a number of defenses we've pled, all of which go to really freedom of speech in the public arena. And we see this action as an attempt to basically vilify Mr. Neufeld for having been critical of Dr. Bondar in the context of the whole Soji debate. Really, that's what's the underlying factual matrix of this case is the great rift within the community on SOGI.
This is Dr. Daryl Ferguson, a former trustee on School District 33. And something weird just happened inside of the hearing. Although Dr. Bondar is being cross-examined and therefore normally would not be discussing anything with her counsel, during the break, counsel said, "Hold on a minute, can I please be excused to talk to my client about you?" And said, just in case they may need a sheriff to get you out of the courthouse. What's that about?
Well, I just made a couple of comments to Carin in the break time in between, which I thought was open. People can talk to people. So I just said, your videos would be an embarrassment to academia. Well, I have been in academia for many, many years, and her videos being naked on a wrecking ball and gyrating on the floor in her underwear and various other sexual things is sexualizing girls. And the one thing we try to avoid in our day and age is treating girls as sex objects. And yet she's performing using sex, and she admits that, to sell her videos. So I just found that was contrary to the well-being of young girls in the district. And as a trustee, I said I'm against that.
Now, this case is expected to continue to Supreme Court into the beginning of next week. And of course, Rebel News will be bringing you more updates, including an upcoming interview with Mr. Neufeld himself at stopclassroomgrooming.com. I'm Drea Humphrey for Rebel News. Now, if you appreciate that Rebel News brings you important stories like this that you absolutely will not hear in this fashion from the state preferred media, please go to stopclassroomgrooming.com and chip in a few bucks to help us cover the many costs involved in bringing reports to you like this, whether it's the lights behind the camera, the wages, the investigations, you name it. We don't take a penny from the federal government like over 95% of Canadian media. We rely on you and we're accountable to you. Go to stopclassroomgrooming.com, donate what you can, and keep yourself informed.